How did you get to New York?
I got to New York because I started going to Juilliard, and my family and I, we moved from San Francisco together. And before that, we had, been pursuing music at a very high level. And so Juilliard was kind of the end goal for me.
You were saying before we started recording that I think you said at the age of 2, you had a violin and you were leaning on that. You were starting to learn that. What's that story? How'd you get into music in the first place?
So my mom, I have a lot of siblings, and so she started us all at 2 years old because she started trying to learn violin at 23 and realized how hard it was at a later age to learn. And so she's like, well, when you're learning a language, it's the best time to learn music as well. And so she started us all at 2, and I started violin at 2 and then switched to viola when I was 10. And then, I just really wanted to pursue that.
You also told me this about the size of your family. How big is your family?
There's 11 kids and 2 parents.
Do you remember from an early age around 2 loving getting into music? Was that something you had a drive to do, or did you feel more forced?
I felt a little forced, I will be honest. I remember probably at the age of 7 that I would hear my mom tuning my violin in the house, and I would go, we didn't keep our backyard very well, so I would go hide in the weeds as my mom was tuning the violin. So I think it was something that I kind of grew to love. I always loved music, but I didn't love practicing. So,
do you remember from an early age also having a natural knack for this kind of work?
People always told me I had talent, but I didn't really I guess I didn't know what it feels like to be somebody else, so I don't think I felt anything special.
Tell the story about how you got into doing viola and not violin. How did that happen?
Okay, so my family and I, we all play instruments, and so we would all play music together. And my mom wanted us to play string quartet as a family. And for string quartet, you need 2 violins, viola, and cello. But there were too many violinists, and so my mom had me switch to viola so I could play string quartets with my family. And I was quite angry at first because, because I don't know if you know anything about viola, then you don't get the melody line that much. It's more of like the inner voice. And so I wanted to play the melody, and viola doesn't get that much. So I was mad, but now I love it. So
what does that mean? The role of the viola typically in a quartet?
It's in between the cello and the violin, range-wise, in sound-wise. It's like that has the same strings as a cello. It's more mellow than a violin. It's kind of like the in-between. And so when people write for it in the context of a string quartet or other things like that, it normally gets the inner voice of the chords or things like that, and not like the top line. So
as you began to get more into the viola, I know you said before we started recording that Juilliard was always a dream for you, but I'd love to hear the story about how your own ambitions within music started. How do you remember that story?
So after I'd switched to viola, I was mad for a while, but when I was 13, I did my first competition and I won it. And I remember being like, wow, I could actually do this. And as I kept playing the viola, I realized what a beautiful tone it had. And I felt like it resonated with me as a person more than the violin, because the violin is like very more shrill and high and things like that. And I felt like I was more mellow of a person. And I think the viola kind of worked better with my personal voice.
The competition that you won at 13, what happened?
Oh, well, that was just a local music competition that my teacher, he had all his students compete in. So,
was it really after you won that you started thinking a little bit bigger about what you might be able to do with this art?
Yeah, I don't know why, but it kind of was.
Juilliard from there on out was sort of the goal, or did that come much later when you were in high school?
I think it was kind of the goal since I was quite young, because I'd always heard of it talked about as this like dream school. And I was like, wow, that's just like dream school. So,
what did you know about it? I mean, Juilliard, even from an amateur perspective, from my perspective, it does have a level of mystique. What did you know about the place?
I didn't actually know that much. I just knew the name, and I admired musicians that had gone there for school. And so it was this pedestal in my mind.
Did you have people at some point kind of indicating to you that you had what it took to potentially get into a place like that? To me, Juilliard is like getting into the NBA. It's very rare. It's very difficult. Did you have people indicating to you that you may have the right stuff?
Yeah, kind of. I know my teacher in San Diego, he had another viola student who had gone there, and he always talked to me about her and I think trying to encourage me to do something with music. And then once my family and we moved to San Francisco to go to the San Francisco Conservatory for the pre-college program, I had a really amazing viola teacher there, and he was constantly pushing me and talking to me about what I could do with music. So,
what does it take to be good at the viola? How do you explain people who are rather exceptional?
Takes a lot of practice. Obviously, there's some talent involved. You have to have, good muscle control and things like that. But there's so much practice involved, really. I mean, it's what everybody says is practice, but it's kind of true.
What kind of practice habits over the years have you developed to try to improve your skill in that regard?
Well, you have to develop the not fun kinds of practice, like the slow kind of practice and slowing everything down and then building it up slowly, the boring stuff, but it's so rewarding in the end that you learn to do it for the results.
Were you pretty structured with having specific parts of your day every day be designed for what sounds like often the grueling, repetitive work of getting better at this?
I wouldn't say I had a strict schedule just because I was homeschooled, and so there wasn't much of a schedule already. I mean, there should have been, but there wasn't. So there wasn't a structured schedule, but I definitely felt like music was more important to me than school. So I would normally do that first. For a while in San Francisco, we were having issues with our neighbors in our apartment. And so we would have to drive down to Golden Gate Park every day and practice for 4 hours there. So that was a more structured schedule for 3 years of my life. But
you would go to the park itself and practice outside.
Yeah. And then people thought we were busking and so they gave us money. But yeah, we were just practicing.
Did the love for the practice and for the instrument typically come after a level of mastery? I don't know if you remember what really began to inflame a real passion for doing the work, but I'd love to hear that.
I don't really know exactly what triggered that, but I think there were a lot of factors. First of all, it had just been part of my life for so long, and I'd listened to that music for so long, classical music in particular, that it was kind of super important part of my life. And I think the competition kind of kickstarted that as well. Cause I was I don't know. I've always had a hard time with lower self-esteem of myself. And so well, actually not always. Cause there was a period in time when my mom would listen to me practice and say I sounded like a dying cat. And I remember thinking, no, I don't. I sound awesome. So, but that was when I was quite young. But I think when I was 13 and won that competition, then I think I've really started to feel more excited about music in the sense that I thought I could do it.
You mentioned that you were homeschooled.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember a year when you really set your sights on post-high school going to Juilliard, if there was a a year of your life when that became the clear object of your work, your ambition. How do you make sense of that?
Well, it had always been in the back of my mind, but I think when it was about a year and a half before I would graduate from high school and I had to start thinking about what I wanted to do for college, that I really, like, that was the clear set goal for like a year and a half. And so I was practicing a ton.
What were you considering at that point? What were the options that were on the table for what you might want to do?
Music. Just music. I didn't think of anything else. I didn't want to do anything else.
Were there other places you would have considered going?
Yeah, and I auditioned for other places as well. I auditioned for San Francisco Conservatory, New England Conservatory, Curtis in Philadelphia, and then Juilliard. I think that was it, actually. Oh, and Manhattan School of Music.
What does that entail to apply to try to get in? I want to get into the specifics of the Juilliard application process, but it sounds very intense.
Yeah, I remember it being quite intense, and I would have to, check all the requirements. And normally for undergraduate degrees, there's not too many rigorous requirements. So it was simple enough to do. Like, you have to make pre-screening recordings. You send it in and they see if they even want you to audition. So that was the first step. And then you send in an application with your background and your an essay of your life or something. And so there's the preliminary round. And then if you pass pre-screening, then they invite you for a live audition. But some schools were still doing Zoom or recorded auditions because of COVID. And Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music were actually the only two schools I auditioned in person for.
When you're going through that application process, did you feel like you had the stuff required to get into these places?
I think I was unsure. I've always kind of felt unsure, but somehow things kind of fall into place as well. So I don't know what's up with that, but
I'd love to get into how Juilliard selects their students. What do you remember from that process? Anything you want to share? I'd love to hear.
Well, I'm not on the inside, so I don't know for sure. And there's probably some sort of politics involved. And it helps to know people. But I know for applying, you should, find out what teacher you want to study with. So you should take trial lessons, which is what I did. I took some trial lessons and I chose my teacher because I really liked the way she taught me. And I had 2 trial lessons with her. And so knowing a teacher and knowing who you want to study with is a really important thing. And then your acceptance is based off a 10-minute audition slot, which is kind of insane because sometimes people have a bad day or things like that. And it's 10 minutes and what can you really tell from 10 minutes? But so there's that, and they listen to so many auditions every day. And it's this crazy process for them, I'm sure. But yeah, and it feels really high pressure because it's just a 10-minute, your entire life hinges on this, how well you do. But yeah, I don't know the inside workings of that, but I came to Juilliard and I had my audition and it went pretty well. And then you wait for a month and then they tell you if you got it or not and how much scholarship and all sorts of stuff like that. So.
Tell me about that day. Tell me about those 10 minutes.
Well, I was in New York with my dad and my brother because my brother, he had gone to San Francisco Conservatory for a year in the college. And then because my family was moving up, my mom's like, you're moving with us as well. So he was also auditioning the same year I was, to Manhattan School of Music. So, I remember having a really hard time sleeping the night before because I was really nervous. And then, woke up and I got ready and I was kind of nervous and I went to the school and I was kind of freaking out, but I remember going into the audition room and feeling like I was being able to center myself, and then after I was done I remember feeling just more at peace. Like it's done and like, you know, there's nothing I can do about it now, but like it didn't go bad. So I was honestly a lot of days like that. I don't remember all the details of because I think I was quite nervous.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Did you get to pick what you played? Do they tell you what to play?
So
How did that happen?
you choose your repertoire based off there's certain requirements of like time periods of repertoire you need and like how much of whatever you need. And so you can like within boundaries choose your repertoire. And then for the order of things, I think you choose what you want to start with and then they choose what they want to hear of everything else in what order.
You mentioned that you couldn't sleep, you were nervous, but you were able to center yourself. I don't know if you remember those 10 minutes particularly well, but did you feel like when you were performing, as you mentioned, those 10 minutes are 10 of the more important minutes of your life?
Yeah.
Did you feel relatively calm or weirdly calm during that time?
I wouldn't say I felt weirdly calm, but I felt like, I mean, when I perform, I really feel like I'm performing not for people in front of me, but rather for like, I don't know, like something like the glory of God or something. And like, because I grew up as a Christian. And so it's kind of like this thing for me where when I'm performing, I really feel like, you know, because I'm not like in my biggest strength that like I have to rely on like a higher power. And so then I feel like when I perform, then that like comes in for me. And I feel not as nervous while I'm performing, I guess.
Is that typically a feeling of empowerment?
Yeah.
So it gets done. You have to wait a month, you said?
Yeah, I think it was a month. Let's see what. Yeah, it was about a month.
Tell me about what happened.
So I was, you know, just, you know, it's kind of hard to live with yourself while you're like, oh, am I going to get in or not? And like, so then I got accepted to all the schools, and then Juilliard, I think, was the last one that accepted me, because I don't know why they decided to wait longer than every other school. Maybe they think they're cool, but so they sent their letter last, and I opened it. I was like, you know, just praying it's going to be the result I wanted. It was, and I also got the Covner fellowship, which was like a huge surprise, and like I was kind of like, I don't know, I could barely believe it when I looked at it, because what that is, it's this donor, he donates a lot of money to this Juilliard school, so they let some students go for free, like housing and meals covered. Wow. And everything, and that's kind of like the like most biggest thing I could have ever imagined ever. So,
and you got that?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Did you have to apply for that separately, or they just award
no,
that to
every
someone?
student who applies to Juilliard is automatically like they could get that.
They're eligible for it.
But the faculty has to recommend them, and then there's a process after that, I think, after the faculty recommends them for that. So I have no idea how it works, but...
What did you do after you got in and you learned about the fellowship?
I was very excited for basically until I got there. And when I got there, I don't know what I did.
Did you scream?
I accepted it. I think I kind of cried, but
I bet. I don't know if you had this fairly well figured out in your head, but did you have a sense of what you wanted to do and what you do want to do with your education and your career eventually? Or is it more step by step, let's go to the best music school in the world and see what happens?
I think when I started, it was definitely more of a step-by-step thing. But as I've gone further into my degree, I think things have kind of like revealed themselves of what I would rather do with my career. And I think there's mostly with what I know I would not want to do. And so like I know that I want to do music with my career, but I don't want to be in an orchestra. I feel like I thrive off of a little bit more like variety in life, and being in an orchestra, I would probably I would stop liking it after probably not that long of a time.
Hmm.
And I really like chamber music, which is just like smaller ensembles of like 3 to 7 people. I don't know. But, so I would definitely want to have chamber music as part of my career. And then also I like teaching, which I didn't realize until, I think it was not last summer, but the summer before. I had an opportunity at a summer festival to teach some younger kids at the festival, and it was really rewarding. And then I just love performing solo repertoire as well. So, and, well, this is kind of a side note, but there's this thing called historical performance where you play period instruments from like the 1700s and things like that. Just basically what they used before they developed everything. And, there's real gut strings on all the instruments. And so Juilliard has this amazing, like, historical performance program, which I've gotten slightly involved with. And just the way they approach Baroque music and early music is so much more alive than the way modern players approach it. So I think that's definitely something I want to explore further.
So much more alive. How?
The way the music sounds and feels, I think the instruments are slightly different. The gut strings sound different. And then the biggest difference is the bow. That it's like, looks more like an actual like bow and arrows kind of bow. And that I think changes the sound a lot. And also the people who specialize in early music, I think, have really looked into how people played it at the time by reading treatises and things like that. And like, I think that's kind of been like cut out of the way modern players think about that early music. And so the people who've gone back and looked into how early music was done back in the day, they just come at it with such a more like fresh and new feeling.
The orchestra opportunity, am I right that most people who graduate from Juilliard, that is their goal, is to play in an orchestra, to get a position in an orchestra and have the kind of repetition you were talking about?
I guess I would say that a lot of people want to do that with their lives, especially wind and brass players, because that's really where most of the good repertoire is for them. But as string players, I think there are a lot of string players that's not their end goal, but a lot of them also do have that end goal or like are open to it. So,
is there a model of somebody you've seen who plays the viola that you know about their career and they've been able to do some combination of chamber work, independent work, something else that you find attractive or interesting about a potential trajectory for you?
Well, actually, my current teacher at Juilliard, that's kind of been her career. She's done just kind of a mix of everything at a very high level. So I think that's kind of what I'm going for.
What has she done?
Well, she's done some competitions and done very well in them, as well as playing at chamber music festivals and playing chamber music with other very high level musicians. And then also a lot of solo repertoire that she's given recitals and concerts for. And then she teaches mostly full time, I guess.
Have you noticed in yourself that the time you've been in New York that you are noticeably better at this? Can you tell you're getting skills that you didn't have before? And I'd love to hear, if the answer is yes, how you know that.
I guess the answer would be yes, but there's kind of like a lot of different aspects to that. Like I can feel definitely in my playing, I've improved a lot, like so much. And I think most of it has to do with just my being able to, because I hear music a certain way in my head, and I think being able to execute that on the instrument is something really hard. And I think that divide has gotten closer, meaning that like I can actually execute the way I want more in my playing. And then also I think as a person, I've just changed so much because being homeschooled my whole life, I wasn't really exposed to very many social situations. I was extremely socially awkward and super, super shy, like actually painfully shy that I couldn't go up to anyone and say hi, even if I wanted to. So, I think one of the biggest aspects that's changed and also has changed my playing as a result, is just my, like, the social aspect of my life, that I actually know people outside of my siblings and mom and dad now. So.
How about your comfort level playing in front of people? I don't know if before you got here, that was also something. I know you were nervous during the Juilliard tryout, understandably, but do you feel more calm, more confident when you're playing in front of people?
Yeah, I would say yes, but it also depends on the performance and the mindset. For me, it's like a very mental thing, even more than like, because you can prepare all you want, but if you're not mentally there, then I don't know, your mind can play tricks on you. So I think I've gotten better at just figuring out how to mentally prepare for a performance.
How do you do that?
It takes a lot of, like, first you need to map out what you want to do with the music and things like that, and just like mapping out even like a storyline, just anything like to get your mind away from like judging yourself while you're playing. And I think also one really good way to frame your mindset is to think about like what you want to come out of your instrument and like constantly be thinking about the music, the phrasing, things like that, as opposed to like who's watching you or, you know, everything that could make you very nervous. Kind
of getting out of your own damn way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
How do you think about the internet as it applies to your potential future? I know you have a relatively large Instagram presence. Like, as you think about the avenues, and I talked to your roommate about this a little bit, like the avenues for your future potentially, how do you think about that, about the role that that may play in a legitimate professional music career?
Well, Instagram and social media is definitely much more important than it used to be, because, I mean, it didn't exist fairly recently, I guess, but until fairly recently. But I guess I haven't thought much about it. I used to want to be super famous on Instagram, and so I would post videos of me playing every day. But since then, my mom has started like her own like mom vlogging YouTube channel. And I think I've kind of lost my love for social media because it's been such an integral part of my life and like almost more of like a job like thing because like, you know, it's one of the sources of income for our family. And so I think, I don't know why I don't care as much about Instagram anymore, but I used to care so much. I think it is an important part, though, and I should probably think about it a little bit more. Well,
does it just feel old and repetitive? I mean, you said this earlier about your own career, that you like variety, and there's something I'm projecting, but I found this in my own career in podcasting. There's something robotic about being enslaved by these platforms where you feel like it's another job you have to do every day. I don't know if that resonates at all.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, is that it just felt a little bit repetitive. But I think now that I was just thinking about it, there's also this thing like where if you're at school and you post a lot of videos or something, there's like the fear of everybody seeing it. So I think that's also been a little part of it. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Do you find that at school? I mean, it must be quite an experience to publish some of the more intimate public performances you have and have everyone you know at a new school see it immediately if they want to.
Yeah, I think also, I don't know, there's just like, it seems like there's a lot of judgment at Juilliard. I don't know. I think because everybody's like trying for the highest level, and so there's just a lot of competition that way. And so it seems like everybody's a little bit judgy there.
If you were to stay in New York for a while after you graduate, I don't know how much you thought about this, and given that you don't want to go into an orchestra, like what are the potential, and this is more of a financial question, I guess, but what are the areas you could go into to make a living to support yourself here?
I think there is for New York especially, there's quite a large freelancing network here where you can do a lot of gigs. So that would definitely be part of it. But more than that, I think teaching would be something I would be very interested in. And I think that's a way you can make a good amount of money. I mean, it wouldn't be like, rich sort of thing, but I don't know. I don't really care that much about being rich. So
yeah. What kind of gigs do you know people have gotten that can help them financially in the music world?
I know one master's student who does gigs with like Broadway shows and things like that, and she's on the Jimmy Fallon show or something, cool stuff like that. So
getting hired, and these are more freelance positions than permanent.
Yeah, it's not permanent at all.
I know you still have a little more time left to go at Juilliard, but do you have a sense of what's next for you, what you want to do afterwards?
So I think since I'm just finishing my bachelor's degree, I would want to get a master's degree as well, because I think there's so much more I could still learn from being at Juilliard for 2 more years, particularly that I've been looking more into the historical performance side of things, and there's a lot of opportunities to learn more about that, I think, in a master's degree especially. So
I'd love to ask you, for somebody that might come across this who's basically you in high school and is thinking about wanting to come to a place like Juilliard, but they don't know anyone who is there or has been there. It's this kind of black box they've never penetrated. What would you share with a friend or somebody who asked for your advice about what you've learned about the place? What's it like? What has surprised you? What has inspired you? Anything that comes to mind, I'd love to hear.
I think it's not actually as scary as it sounds. And I think there's also a lot of unserious people there, which is interesting, like people who don't care that much. So I always thought of it as like everybody's going to be like just like the highest level ever, but there's also just some people that aren't that high of level. So it was kind of not what I expected, in the sense that, like, people still like to go and party and things like that. So
is it a party school? Have you found it to be that way?
I'm not really sure what a real party school is like, because I've never been, but I think so. People like to party, yeah.
The makeup of the place, I think I remember learning this, that it's very small, right? The number of people who are let in every year is less than 100. You would know better than me.
Yeah, there's across all the divisions, there's a dance division, drama division, and music division. I think there's 900-ish students
in total.
How
about the intensity of the place? I'm sure that must have been a bit intimidating before coming here. How has the workload been compared to what you had been accustomed to before?
Well, I think coming from homeschooling, it was quite hard to get used to a classroom environment, and like having, you have assignments and tests and things like that. But I ended up, I think, really thriving under that structure, because I prefer structure, I think. And so it wasn't actually too bad. But I think more tthan anything, I just grew to love learning things. Because like before, when I was like kind of like, I was homeschooling and I was kind of in charge of what I was going to learn. And like, I would not learn that many things, because I was like, I don't see how this could benefit me. But going to Juilliard, there's like music history courses and things like that. And I really fell in love with history, I think, because of that.
The move from being homeschooled your whole life to moving to New York City has to be one of the more drastic culture shocks, I would imagine, in some ways, at least in your own country. What about the city of New York? What have you made of it? What has surprised you about this place?
I think it wasn't too shocking, just because I had lived in San Francisco for a while. And so it was not too bad that way, like in city-wise. But I don't know what shocked me, really. I guess nothing did. Because I'd always heard about New York. It's like this crazy city, and I was kind of expecting it to be crazy. So
I think you told me before we started recording that you've enjoyed it here.
yeah, I have enjoyed New York.
What have you enjoyed about it?
Just so many different cultures and types of people, and it just feels cool to be in New York.
I always like to ask this question at the end, and I think this would be a good final question to ask you, which is I like to ask people about how they think about success in their life and in their profession. You're obviously just getting started. But at this point in your life, when you think about the future of your career, what does that word mean to you? What does success look like to you personally?
Well, as I'm thinking about it more, I think I've realized that success doesn't mean being famous. You know, I don't know, growing up, I was like, oh, I'm going to go be famous and like that's success. But I think the more I am learning music and learning about music, and I'm realizing that I think success to me would mean more of like what I can do for other people with my music. And I realized that music really is a healing thing and that it really does move people. I've felt it like for myself and for other people. I've done a lot of like community engagement things and helping just people in like retirement homes and things like that through music, and like just seeing the joy it brings them. And I think that's the important part about what I want to do. I want to bring joy to other people.
I want to add one additional final question to this, which is related to the struggle you had initially in moving into this instrument that you begrudgingly took on, and now it's a huge part of your life. How do you feel about your work and music in general? Do you have a love for what you do? How do you feel about all the effort, all the time you put into this right now? I'd love to close with that and hear what you have to say.
I do love what I do. I think it was a kind of development that I started to love it because, like, as a kid, I think, it was just this other thing I did. But as I started to develop as a musician, I realized just what a gift music is to the world and how it can truly like move people without words, which is kind of insane. Like I don't know, it's just insane to think about it that like it can like communicate things without words. It's really cool that way. And yeah, I think it's just this part of my life that I never ever want to get rid of.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
Pearl, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.